What's up, everybody? I think we got this figured out. Volume looks a little low, so we will work on that, see if we can get that fixed. Because, first day. But what's up, everybody? We're going to do some regular streaming here, and I'm hoping that it can become kind of a multi-stream, right? We're not just talking about one thing or doing one thing, but we're moving around to all the different aspects of the things that I love to do. And one of the things that I love to do is talk about Denver sports. So I think every Monday we'll talk about Denver sports and kind of the national sports scene in general. I mean, we won't limit it to just Denver, but we will definitely talk about the leagues and such that the teams participate in. And with everything going on right now, well, I shouldn't say that. Summertime, obviously, so a lot of speculative talk that we're doing. But I think the big thing is talking about these teams for their upcoming season and what possibly they could have for changes. You've got very successful teams in this city that aren't quite living up to what they should be accomplishing. And I think that's an interesting place to be in. And it's funny because they're all at this level, but kind of with different expectations and different, how do I want to say it? Different leashes that they have in terms of what we'll accept from them along the way. And some of them, Nuggets, Avs, it's one of those things where they've been here for a little while. And so the question is, what are they going to do to keep that going? And some of these guys, like the Broncos, they just got here, and so, but strike while the iron's hot, you know what I mean? You can't be missing out on opportunities. And that was one of the things I talked about when I was on with Tyler and D-Mac, before the AFC Championship game, before the AFC playoffs, I think even. We were talking about the expectation for the Broncos, and, there was kind of a, from them to a happy we're here type thing. And they were ragging on me and my Bills fandom and Josh Allen and saying, well, they haven't done it yet. If he doesn't do it this year, should you just give up kind of thing was their thought process. And I said, I would feel more pressure if I was the Denver Broncos, because getting that one seed and getting to have those games at home, that doesn't happen all that often. Now, and this is where the interesting part comes, you had an injury, and so nobody was expecting them to win that AFC Championship game. And they still came close to doing it, but it just kind of shows, those opportunities, they only come around every once in a while. And so I think it's an interesting conversation because the Avs and the Nuggets have been at that level for years now, and there's a little bit of a frustration and angst with those two franchises, where the Broncos got there for the first time last year, and there's questions to be asked about, how far can they go? And it's more excitement than it is angst. And it's interesting, the dichotomy between those three franchises. And then, of course, you got the Rockies, who are building. I don't know. I'm not as frustrated with them as some people, but I also tuned out for a couple of years. I got mad at them, got mad at ownership, and said, I'm not going to pay attention here for a little bit. And I think they're on the right path back, which is good. And it's at least they're on the right path, So, we are going to stream every day. We're not going to talk Denver sports every day. Denver sports will be on Mondays. We've got some video games that we're going to play. We've got, we're going to talk about some D&D. We're going to talk about Buffalo sports, and we'll have kind of a free-for-all day as well. So each day of the week will be different, but if you're into Denver sports, make sure you come back every Monday. And we'll try to get some of our friends to hop on with us. I haven't asked them yet, but a lot of the guys I used to work with, I'm sure, would be willing to pop on for 30 minutes or an hour. And so the hope is that we can get a a constant stream of guests in here to talk about the Denver sports scene with people that you trust and love. And hopefully that includes me. So the first thing I want to talk about is the Denver Nuggets. I want to start here because I think I'm the most frustrated with this one, and it's one of those things where. So let's talk about the good news first. The good news is your guy said he wants to be here forever. So there was a interview with him in Serbia after I think one of his basketball games over there playing for the national team. And he basically said, like, I want to sign in Denver. It's a business reason that I haven't signed yet. That business reason is very easily definable, right? The salary cap has kept going up. The Supermax has kept going up. And so there's a significant portion of money that he would forego if he signed this year, this offseason, rather than signing next offseason. And just very simply, there's more money in it for him if he waits. But I think that's why he's tried to make very clear that he wants to sign in Denver. His plans are to be here. And so you have Jokic, the best player, in my opinion, in the world, for 5 more years. 6 more years. Because I do believe if he signs the contract, he'll play it out. That's one of the things that he said. Seems like the type of guy that he is. It makes sense to me. So if you've got Jokic for 6 more years, you had a first-round exit last year. And so you need to tell me either you have a plan to win the championship this year, or you've got a plan to win it in 3 years. One of those two things has to be true. And I think it's fair to have serious doubts about if the core that they have right now can win an NBA championship this year. Because there are too many failings with it. It has happened too many times. And I think Jamal came back better last year. I think he was strong for the entire season. And then the playoffs, didn't matter. I mean, you got stomped out by Minnesota. You should be embarrassed of how that ended. You really should. As a Nuggets fan, as a Nuggets front office, as a team member, you should be embarrassed how you got stomped out in the playoffs. So if you have the best player in the world, in my opinion, Jokic, and you're getting stomped out in round 1, the question is real simple. You can't go back with the same lineup. You can't do the same thing. And so far, all they've done is lost players. I mean, part of what we celebrated Tenzer and Wallace for last year was bringing in guys like Valanciunas and Hardaway. And I know it was tough with Valanciunas through parts of the season. Hardaway I thought was very good. I thought Jonas gave you something during the year. And so the question is, what are you doing? You've lost 2 of your depth pieces. You don't have a full roster right now. You're at the second apron already, and you haven't even signed Peyton Watson, which is something that you want to do, but doesn't feel incredibly likely. It doesn't feel like you can afford it. So that to me doesn't feel like a team that can compete for a championship this year. But then you're also screwing yourself over by putting yourself in the second apron and, giving contracts to these kids saying that you think that they're part of their future. So what do you do? Well, first let's talk about, and this was from the Sporting News and Yahoo, and let's get it pulled up here. Okay. So, Nuggets, Cavaliers, Hawks, Bucks reportedly in bidding war for $11 million freaky athletic NBA champion. So if we roll down in this, and this is Hunter Cookson from Sporting News through Yahoo is where I found it. And he's talking about how the Nuggets are in a tough financial situation. Re-signing Spencer Jones to a 2-year, $12 million deal. Which, I mean, good for OKC. They put it on you a little bit, you know? It was a move, certainly, to sign Spencer Jones to that offer sheet. And now you're looking at signing Peyton Watson, and, you know, the discussion is more of a sign and trade because the fear that you can't really afford this contract. So the conversation has to be about if Peyton Watson deserves that much money. Because you gave that a similar amount of money to Christian Brown, and now everybody's saying they regret it. Peyton Watson saying he wants more. So Hunter here says Watson and his camp reportedly seeking a significant contract somewhere in the range of $28 million. Offers so far have been fluctuating between $20 and $24 million. And that's from Clutch Points from Brett Siegel is what that report is. So here's the thing. You're only like $4 million apart. $4 to $8 million apart. Which on an NBA roster is nothing. If you're going to pay the $24 million, pay the $28 million. If you believe that Peyton Watson is part of your future. But part of the problem here is that your future is getting, I don't know, muddied by the fact that you're paying these guys you're expecting to continue to get better. Peyton Watson has been good for a large number of years. He was great for a small portion of last year. But how much is that worth? Is that worth a $28 million a year contract? You could say the same thing of Christian Brown. Been good for a lot of years. Was great really for kind of one. And they gave him the contract. And then last year, everybody was complaining about it. You need those guys to step up to be key pieces of what this team is building. And if you believe that they have a championship core still, then those guys stepping up should be enough to win a championship. But you got knocked out in the first round by a team that didn't even have their best player for a majority of the series. I mean, that's unacceptable. And so while I want to believe that this core is still a championship core, and 2 years ago they took the champions, the Thunder, all the way to the brink. I believed that they were close then. Then pay the extra $4 million and get Peyton Watson in here. But then you have to have a conversation about the luxury tax and what that does to you moving forward in the future. And that's why I said, like, the most important thing for the Nuggets and Jokic is you've got a 6-year window here. So either tell me you can win it right now or tell me that you're going to be able to win it in 3 years. And if you slide into the second apron, which you have already, you prevent yourself in those future years from going into the second apron because eventually you're going to need to get out of it. Otherwise, the payment penalty is going to be way too high. And this team has shown that before, that they don't want to pay that high luxury tax penalty. So can you sign and trade? Can you get in on one of these other big trades that's happening. You've already let a couple of them go by. And I think you have to have a real conversation about if Murray is still the running man for Jokic. He's been getting, and his contract's not egregious. It's a fine contract. But he's been getting paid to be the second guy, and I don't know. Can you still win a championship with that? And then Gordon, I love him to death. I really do. I mean, he is Mr. Nugget through and through. But he can't stay healthy, man. That hamstring, I don't know. If you could promise me that we'd get 70 regular season games and all the playoff games, then he's a lock. Like, I want him on the roster for sure. But Aaron Gordon and his inability to be available is a huge problem. I mean, a huge problem. And so for me, it's like you have to look at those two pieces and say, all right, well, of my starting five, if I've got Brown for $25 million, I've got Watson for $25 million, and I got Jokic, obviously, for the Supermax, whatever that is next year when he signs it. Is my team better off trading Murray and Gordon and taking that money and reassigning it like they did with MPJ to try to build a better team around Nikola Jokic? Because I don't know that the answer is that Murray's the right guy anymore, or that you can count on Gordon. And like I said, you got a 6-year window here where you're going to have Anthony Edwards is always going to be in the way. And you have had so much trouble with him and Chris Finch that it's hard to imagine that goes away. You're going to have a OKC team that still has a ridiculous amount of first-round picks. And so even though they sign those big contracts, they can continue to draft, develop, trade away guys, and find enough depth with all the picks that they have to be an absolute problem. I mean, they're going to be one of the best teams in the league. You have the reigning Western Conference champions who have rebuilt in a quick turnaround here, and I think are only going to get better over the next couple of years. That includes Wemby growing in confidence. That includes their other young guys growing in confidence. A trip to the NBA Finals going to make them believe that they can continue to do that. And so you're talking about half the playoff field is deadly for you already. We haven't even talked about Luka Doncic. You know what I mean? Extra money in LA and what they might be able to pull off with the Lakers. I don't know. It's one of those things where you got so much talent in the West, and it's always been true. But, like, do you think Cooper Flag and Dallas are going to be terrible forever? I don't, So over these next 6 years, if you're the Nuggets, you have to have a plan. Like, there has to be a legitimate plan. Now, I think LeBron James played into this. I think he slowed down the Nuggets because I think it was an option and a good option. It's interesting. I mean, how he would have fit into this roster, I think would have been great. And for the kind of money that he took in Philly, if he had done that here, it's certainly worth paying attention to, no doubt. So I don't blame the Nuggets for slowing down their run to hopefully bring in a guy like LeBron. That said, he goes to Philly. Now you've got this second part of the offseason, and I just think you're in a tough spot about where exactly it is you think you're going with this team. If you would have brought in LeBron, I think you could easily say, I think they're a championship contender this year. Period, end of story. And then whatever happens over the next 5 years happens because you got a shot at it this year. And I think that's totally valid for this franchise to operate that way. But now that you don't have him, do you still think this team is a championship contender this year? And, I mean, I'm not even sure there's anybody that you could go out and get that would change that. The big deals have already been made. So if you're not, if your answer is no, then you have to look to the next contract for Jokic and say, how do we put enough around him that we are a championship contender versus an OKC team that continues to draft first-round picks and draft them high and draft them well versus a San Antonio team that's continuing to get better versus Anthony Edwards and somehow Tim Connolly keeps putting together depth and teams in Minnesota that's excellent. How do I compete with those teams over the next 6 years? An injured Aaron Gordon isn't going to get it done. And, I mean, I hope Jamal comes out with the fire he came out with last year, but at the end of the day, it was a first-round exit. So, I think big picture, you really have to talk about if you need to peel off some parts from this franchise, this group, and aim at what can I do to put the best team around Jokic in 2 years or 3 years. Or you have to find a way to improve this roster this year. And you're already in the second apron. I just don't know how you're going to do that. If you believe that having Murray and Gordon are around are your best option at winning a championship, then you have to look at trading guys like Christian Brown, and you have to look at trading guys like Peyton Watson and sign and trade and get as much as you can for him. But you need more depth. The two guys that you brought in for depth last year left. That's why this offseason hasn't made sense to me so far. And I don't think you were going to be able to keep him. Jonas wants to go to Greece. Everybody knows that. I don't think there was any way that he's staying. Hardaway played so well for you last year. He was going to get more money than you could probably give him. I just don't know that there's anything that you could do about it. I don't even know. Let me look up what he signed for. Let's see. But so all that being said, like 1 year, $6 million, all guaranteed. Man. And what was he making for you last year? $1 year, $3 million. So he doubled his money. But it's just another guy that you let walk out the door. And, like, I don't know. You didn't have enough depth already. And you're letting these guys walk out the door. And so, I don't know. I mean, if I'm reading tea leaves, it says there has to be bigger moves here in the works. Tenzer and Wallace have to believe that they've got their finger on something. Really, it's Wallace. Tenzer's more like the cap guy. But, I mean, the cap is part of the problem here. So, I mean, going back to what we were talking about, why does the $4 million that you're a part on Peyton Watson, why does that keep coming up? Well, just pay him the extra $4. If you believe that he's an important component to this being a championship contender, pay him the extra $4 million. Just pay him. But you're going to be so deep in the second apron, it's going to be hard to move contracts to get out of that. So, I don't know. I don't know how Nuggets fans feel. Unfortunately, I'm not on the radio enough anymore to have a good feel for that. But that being said, like, to me, it's really frustrating. And I don't know. I mean, maybe it's a situation where they aren't as good as they used to be, and I just need to learn how to deal with it. But it's, for me, if you're talking about the Nuggets, what they've done so far this year, no good. Mental health guy, what is up, brother? Thrilled to have you back. Yes, we decided to knock the dust off the podcast equipment. Gonna do different streams every day. Today, first day will be Denver Sports Monday. We'll do that on Mondays. And we'll talk, the national scene as well, but we'll talk mostly Denver sports teams on Monday. We'll do Buffalo sports on Thursday, and Sterls will be back for that. So excited about that. Me and Sterls getting back at it. So, yeah, we're back. Appreciate you dropping in, saying what's up. So as far as the Nuggets go, I feel like there has to be moves waiting to be made. And if the only move that gets made is a Peyton Watson sign and trade, it's going to be pretty underwhelming. And as if you weren't already asking the big fella to do too much work, I feel like you're going to be asking even more of him. Because it's just, they haven't done enough to put guys around him. And maybe Murray comes back with that fire again. Maybe he has another great year. Maybe Aaron Gordon can stay healthy. But does that get you past the second round of the playoffs? Does that get you to a Western final? Does that get you to an NBA final? I don't know. And you're in the second apron already. So I just concerned about how much they've done and how much more they need to do to make themselves a contender. And if they're not going to do that, then I want them looking at the next couple of years to see if they can get something together that feels like a contender, that may not include the core as it has been for the past couple of years. And there's been some talk about MPJ, and I saw a headline of one of the articles was, did the Nuggets give their crown jewel to the Brooklyn Nets for the Nets to have their rebuild? I don't know, but I don't think it's. I don't think you can look back on it and say that was a bad deal. I mean, think about the guys that you'd have to have let walk if you kept MPJ on there. So I love MPJ. Like, I think he's a good player, and I think he mattered to this team a lot. But that being said, I don't know if he was part of the championship core, and I feel like they need to make some big moves if they really want to compete in the West with the Spurs and the Thunder and the Timberwolves. Let's see, mental health guy. Do you think the Cronkies are fully focused on the Nuggets right now, or more focused on the Rams and Arsenal? It's interesting because so Stan and Josh kind of split up the owner duties. And when it comes to the Nuggets and the Avs, Josh Kroenke kind of handles everything. When it comes to the Rams and Arsenal, that's more of a Stan thing. And I do think it's important to have a presence, make sure things are being run the way you want them to be run, so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, you don't want your owner that involved. You know what I mean, mental health guy? You don't want him over the top making decisions. You don't want Jerry Jones. You don't want Jerry Jones. So I think they're involved enough that they do what a good owner should do, which is provide a little bit of leadership, make sure that it's being run the way they want it to be run, but then step out of the way. So I think there's enough focus from Josh on the Nuggets and the Avs. And in turn, Stan watching the Rams and Arsenal. I think there's enough of attention being paid, right? Like, it's not like they're just off running their teams to their own devices, but also, you know, it's not choking for the GMs to run. So, but I think it's a good question. So yeah, Nuggets frustrated. Hopefully we can get somewhere soon here. All right, I'm going to run some ads here to burn the pre-roll for a little bit, and then we'll come back. We'll talk about the Avs and the contract extension that nobody's talking about instead of the one that everybody is talking about. We'll come back and talk about that next. All right, everybody, welcome back to a Denver Sports Monday. I am Rob Trujillo. And yes, I will be back streaming hopefully every day of the week, doing different stuff, some video games, some D&D content, and some sports content. We'll be moving all around, different themes for each day. On Mondays, we will do Denver Sports Talk. Hopefully, we can bring in a guest or two, some old friends from my old work, and so we can get you some of your, trusted voices across the Denver sports scene. But I'll also give you my opinions on things that are going on. And what I want to talk about is the Avs and the contract extension that nobody's talking about, because the contract extension that everybody's talking about is Cale Makar. And that's obviously, right? But he's going to get signed, right? Like, we're not worried about if they're going to sign him or not, or if he's part of the future. Of course, he's going to get a deal. It's rumored that it could be $20 million AAV. Leo Carlson signing an $18 million deal. I think you have to be open to the fact that Cale Makar is going to sign something in the range of $20 million. And that's fine. Like, he is your guy. And so if that's the case, then pay him whatever he wants and build your team from there. Now, if you do that, you better make sure that you can put a decent team around him. If you are watching this on the YouTube edited video and you weren't here when we were just talking about Jokic and the Nuggets, you don't want to have a corpse of a contender around your best player. And as Nathan McKinnon gets older, Cale already might be your best player. That's a fun argument to have and a good problem to have, that you've got one of the best forwards in the league and one of the best D-men in the league. But so it begs the question of, how are you going to continue to fill out this roster with enough talent? And so I want to talk about the contract that nobody's talking about. Let's pull this up here. So this is from ProHockeyRumors.com. Brian LaRose put out an article that basically outlines each of the upcoming years, the big contracts the teams have expiring. Excuse me, hold on. Okay, the big contracts the teams have expiring, who they might be looking to re-sign, so on and so forth, right? And so as you roll through here, there's a bunch of different years and explanations of what they might be looking for in terms of what they think the cap will be, what the cap charges they already have on that year are, and so on and so forth. And as we look at this upcoming year, 26-27, expiring contracts, of course you have Brett Burns. That's fine. You're going to play that year to year. You got Cale Makar, which everybody's talking about. He's likely going to double his AAV from $9 million a year. Nicholas Wedgwood, whatever, right? I shouldn't say whatever. Wedgwood is a discussion to be had. Is he your starting goalie? Do you want to run with just Blackwood? How much do you want to commit to goaltender? How much would he be willing to take? I think Wedgwood is an important conversation to have, so I shouldn't just brush that off. But the contract extension that I don't think anybody's talking about that is wildly important to me is Artturi Lehkonen. It's really interesting to me the value that the Avs are going to assign to Lecky. He is a top 6 guy for you, bumps up to the first line sometimes. But as LaRose points out here, only passed 50 points once. So, LaRose speculates that his price tag could pass $8 million a year on a long-term deal. But can you afford to do that if you pay Makar $20 million a year? And what do you think Lehkonen really is if you're one of the, other teams around the league, right? Is Lehkonen, he's definitely a top 6 guy, but he's a two-way forward. He's good defensively. I wouldn't say great defensively, but I'm open to getting challenged on that. Um, I think he's got a real nice scoring touch that if you pair it up with an elite player, can really be good. And so I think times when you've seen him play with various players across the Avs lineup, that manifests itself in different ways. When he plays with McKinnon, he looks like a top wing guy. But he's not that by himself, right? I think McKinnon helps make him that. When you see him play with like Landeskog, I just think he's a good top six winger. But in this NHL, as things continue to evolve over the next couple of years here, it makes me think of Alex Tuck. Like I think Tuck's a little bit better than Lehkonen, and the Sabres just went through this with Tuck. Ends up going to Washington for over $10 million a year. What exactly was that deal? Let's look that up. Because I think that they're real comparable. I think Tuck has a little bit more scoring versatility to him. It was 10.5 AAV. So if a guy like Tuck is getting 10.5 AAV, like you're living in a world where Lehkonen, $8 million a year sounds like probably something that he's going to be able to get. And over the past couple of years, and I think these moves have been necessary and the right moves, but over the past couple of years, you have removed top six talent to try to fill out the depth on this roster. And I think it had been the right move when they did it the couple of times that they did. But you're starting to run thin on top six talent. And it's important that you keep some of these guys. When we were talking about the Rantanen contract, I don't know, $10.5 million a year sounded crazy. Not crazy. I shouldn't say crazy. $11 million a year just sounded like it would be too much of a burden on the Avs salary cap to keep him. And that could still be right because $20 million a year for Cale Makar is it's gonna hit, man. It's gonna hit. Let's see what that contract ended up being. And so I think that's at some point you have to swallow some of these deals and just pay these guys to keep enough talent in your top six that two of the best players in the world aren't going the way of Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin, where you just don't have enough talent around them to be a contender anymore. And for me, I think that was hard to watch. I can't get the numbers on this contract. Let me see here. I think it was bad for hockey that Crosby and Malkin are on a team that is, struggles to make the 8th spot in the playoffs. And, it's much like Jordan playing for the Wizards. Like it's a time all of us would rather just forget. You know what I mean? Let's see. So it ended up being 12. 12 for the AAV. Tuck got 10.5. Tuck is not the same player that Mikko Rantanen is. You know what I mean? And so, that deal for the Stars, I think, will age pretty well. They have their own cap trouble. But it's one of those things where, I think that was the right move to allow you to bring in guys to fill out the bottom half of that roster that I think was a big problem for a long time. And I think that team was dominant this year. I do not understand what happened versus Vegas. I really don't. Up until the very last game, I was like, there's no way. There's no way the Avs go out like this. Before the series, I was picking the Avs. When they lost a game or two, I was like, it's going to be a reverse sweep. They're going to, you know what I mean? I could not believe what happened to them. I thought they had so much talent this year. So, a disappointing end for the Colorado Avalanche. And it begs the same question that the Nuggets had. You're going to sign Cale Makar to a $20 million AAV deal. You're going to sign Jokic to a Supermax. How are you going to put enough talent around these guys to make it feel like they are a contender every year? Feels like they're a contender this year. So that's good. I mean, I don't think it's quite as dire as the Nuggets situation, where it doesn't feel like the Nuggets are a championship contender. It just doesn't. The way they went out last year makes it feel like they are not a championship contender. Makes it feel like they are a top half of the West playoff bracket. So I mean like a top 4 West team that's going to get bounced in the second round. That's how it feels like the Nuggets are. And I think for this year, you have enough talent for the Avs that would be my expectation. That my expectation would be better than that for the Avs this year. I think they can win the West. I think they can win the Stanley Cup. Oh, Kevin in Illinois. What's up, man? Good to see you back here as well. Gonna start streaming regularly. We'll do Denver sports on Mondays. So if you're looking for somewhere to flip over, hopefully we can have you come join us Mondays. Other days we'll be doing some video game stuff, some Buffalo sports, some free-for-alls. But Denver sports will be on Monday, so hopefully we can entice you to come back on Mondays. And what we're talking about right now is the Avs, and they feel like a contender right now. But I'm worried about them letting Artturi Lehkonen walk away. And so when you do that, you've got to figure out how to replace top 6 talent without first-round draft picks that are high enough to replace top 6 talent. And for that, you've got to make trades with teams that are talent-rich when it comes to young guys. That is San Jose. That is Buffalo. That is let's see, who else would I think of when I think of talented young? Maybe Chicago, but I don't think Chicago has a ton of talent on that team. But you've got to find these teams that have young, good prospects, and then you've got to find ways to trade with them to replenish that top 6 talent that you don't necessarily have in your system. If you let a guy like Artturi Lehkonen walk because you say he's not worth 8 or 9 or 10 AAV, I just think you're going to find yourself in a situation where, like, let's play it out, right? Brett Burns retires. Brock Nelson retires. Lehkonen walks. Manson maybe retires. Kadri maybe retires. Over the next couple years, you've got to find ways to either refill, or you've got to trade those guys and get young talent for them while they still have value. And so that's trading Lehkonen now or at the trade deadline. And I just don't think that this team is going to do that because, like I said, I think they're a championship contender. So I don't think they are going to look to do that. But you don't have any first-round picks, and you can't replace that talent as it goes. And so if you're talking about paying Cale Makar $20 million AAV, filling out that roster with free agents is going to be really tough. It's going to be really, really hard. And so, you know, if you're talking about the Avs and their future, yes, of course, everybody wants to talk about the Cale Makar contract, what it'll be, how long it'll be. Also, how much. But I don't think those really are questions. I think the answer to all those questions is as long as they can sign it for and as much as he wants because you're going to do it. So fine. But you have to find the other people around that could be affected. And I think Lehkonen, he's on $4.5 million AAV right now. Are you going to double his salary? Are you going to be able to afford to do that? You're getting into dangerous territory. And, yeah, Kevin, that's exactly what we talked about. I did Nuggets earlier in the stream, and, man, they don't feel like a contender this year. Sure, you have Jokic signing a Supermax, which is great, but you've got to find a way to put enough talent around him to put him on a championship contender team. And you're already in the second apron, and you haven't even signed Peyton Watson yet. Like, what are you doing? So my fear for both these teams is exactly what you're saying, that they missed their best window, and that it's downhill from here, I think is a fair fear to have for both these franchises. Now, that being said, all it takes is some good management to fix it. I don't necessarily have anything against the former GM, but Sakic built this thing. I'm not afraid of him taking the reins back over. And I think you got to hope that he's got a vision and a plan for how he's going to refill this roster with talent around McKinnon and Makar. How do you do that? One of the things I think you do is you make sure that you keep Landeskog around for as long as you can, on as low as a number of you can as you can. Let's see, his contract expires after 28-29. And he's only on a $7 million deal, but, you know, I think you could feel this year the difference there is having a guy who can be a face of a franchise from a media standpoint, from a locker room standpoint, having Gabe back this year. Felt like it took some pressure off Nate, some pressure off Cal. Those guys are not natural spokesmen. And so having Gabe back there to do that, to answer the easy questions and the tough ones with a smile, to help regulate that locker room a little bit. I mean, Nate even talked about it during the year, how much of a difference it made. I think you got to make sure you have a guy like that in going into the future. And if that's Gabe as he's turning 38, I don't care. You know what I mean? Like, I think you got to make sure you keep signing him. But you also have to fill out the roster with talent. And so, you know, what we brought up was they balked at the Rantanen number, and I think rightfully so. They needed to build out the depth for this team the last 2 years. I felt great about the depth on this team going into the playoffs 2 years ago and going into the playoffs this year. And so I think it was the right move to let Rantanen go and try to fill out the roster with that money to make sure that you had good talent all the way up and down. Problem is, Now you just can't afford to let a guy like Lehkonen walk. You traded away Nichushkin for, honestly, it felt like not much. I wonder if McFarland was the one who was like, we can't afford to let that talent walk out the door if we're only paying him that much money. And Sakic was like, the guys don't trust him anymore. I don't trust him. And first chance I get, I'm trading him. And that's kind of what it felt like. Which, if there's locker room problems there and guys like Nate don't trust him anymore, then maybe you have to do it. But you can't keep letting, top 6 guys walk out the door when you don't have first round draft picks anymore. And so you're going to have to pay some of these guys. This article that we're reading from Pro Hockey Rumors here, I'll put it back up here. This article I read through, a lot of the conversation was about if Lehkonen's worth $8 million a year. So here's his expiring contract, 4.5 right now. And then he thinks it could push past $8 million on a long-term basis. I think it probably doubles his salary. I think it's probably a $9 million deal. And you can't keep letting top 6 forwards walk out the door. He's only passed 50 points once, though, and I think Lehkonen is very much a product of who you put him with, the talent that you put him with on a line. I don't think he drives play per se. So, it's a tough situation because you've limited yourself to this top 6 forward. You let Rantanen walk. You traded Nichushkin. Marty Necas, great top line guy, perfect. But you're running out of top 6 forwards. You know what I mean? And I think that's a tough situation to be in. Because then Lecky knows that you can't afford to let him walk. And to say that he's just going to, by his good graces, sign a deal that is fair or is a team-friendly deal, I just don't think it's likely. So I think that's one of the things. And then also, I was reading Colorado Hockey Now and Arif Dean, and he was talking about, do you think Nabokov is going to make it to the NHL? I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Hold on, let me look it up. Yeah, I think I'm pronouncing that right. And when do you think he's going to push into the NHL and start actually pushing for NHL playing time? Not playoffs, but playing time. And it's a particularly interesting thing because you've got Scott Wedgwood on a $2.5 million deal that's expiring at the end of the year. So how much money do you want to put into goalies with a $20 million Cale Makar contract and top 6 forwards walking out the door? How much money do you want to put in a goalie? How much money would Scott Wedgwood be willing to take? And is a guy like Nabokov going to be your answer? Hey, we're going to go with the young goalie moving forward to save money. It's an interesting problem for me. It really is. Thank you for the follow, Electric Experience. It's an interesting question for me. It really is. That is a place where you could save some money. How much is Wedgwood going to ask for? He was no doubt your best goaltender last year. He was your starter with a bullet for me. That, not everybody felt that way, obviously. But so it just begs the question of what long-term is your plan at goaltender? And do you have to bite maybe playing a young kid there because you can't afford to let more top six forwards walk out the door? So I think the Avs are in a real tough spot. The difference between the Avs and the Nuggets is when we were talking about the Avs, if you're watching this on the YouTube cut rather than watching it live. When we were talking about the Nuggets, they don't feel like a championship contender this year. Not as currently constructed. Feel like a top 4 seed in the West, feel like second round of the playoffs, but they just don't feel like a championship contender this year. The Avs do. And so if you want to tell me, hey, you're bringing up all these problems for 2-3 years down the road, and we don't care. We don't care because we believe we can win the Stanley Cup this year, and that's what we're trying to do. I'm here for that. I'm here for that. But I just think it's worth discussing, especially with, a contract like Lehkonen and Makar and Wedgwood all coming up at the end of the year. It's worth discussing what your plan is to make sure that there's enough talent around two of the best players in the NHL that you are a contender every year. And I think it was Raj I had this conversation with. Oh, no, maybe it was Coach a couple years ago. But don't become a corpse of a contender. That's what we've been dealing with Malkin and Crosby in Pittsburgh, and it drives me crazy. I think it's bad for hockey. Sidney Crosby's on a team that can, barely make the playoffs, is the last wild card team. He's got no chance at winning another cup there. They're not any kind of contender. I think it would be better for the NHL if he was. But also I understand the loyalty of wanting to stick with your city. And, you've been a captain there I saw a thing. He's been a captain there for more than half of his life. He's been the captain of the Pittsburgh Penguins. Think about that. That's crazy. And you know what? Landy's probably getting there too. Because he's got a couple years still, but he was 18. And they made him captain right away, I'm pretty sure. I think maybe Hayduk was captain one of those years, but he was 18 or 19 when they made him captain, something like that. So he's coming up on that too. So I understand, Crosby and Malkin wanting to stay in Pittsburgh and this is our home and blah, 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 blah. But that being said, I just don't let this Avs team turn into that. Don't let them turn into the corpse of a contender, man. That's all. That's all I want to say about it. So I think they're in a good position next year. I think things in Dallas are getting weird, man. I got to tell you. I think things in Dallas are getting weird. They're in one of there's only 4 divisions in hockey, but they're in the best division in the West, obviously. And with the Atlantic in the East, it's arguably the best division in hockey. And I have no fear of them being able to win it and be a contender. I think Minnesota's good. I just don't think they're all the way there. I don't think they're on the Avs level. I think they're very good. I think they'll be a very good regular season team. I think the Kaprizov deal was a bit of a nightmare, if I'm being honest. But I think they're a decent team. I think Nashville will be better with McFarland running things. But we'll have to see how they turn out. Winnipeg is stripping it down. I don't know. Chicago, maybe. Can they crawl back up? But that's all to say that I have a lot of confidence in the Avs and that they are a contender this year. So, if you want to tell me I'm not worried about Cale Makar, I'm going to pay him whatever I'm going to pay him. And I'm not worried about Artturi Lehkonen because if we have to let him go, then we let him go and we find a spot. we're trying to win a cup this year, I'm here for it. Um, let's see what else around the NHL. I didn't do like an around the NBA thing. Um, the one of the things that was interesting to me was KD comparing the star power on the 76ers and the Golden State Warriors he was on. And it's like I man, those Warriors teams, I hated them. I know everybody loved them. They were a ton of fun. I hated them. But the one thing I could always say was like I had respect for them because they mostly built that team themselves. Draymond, Clay, Steph. I mean, those are guys they drafted. So like it was hard for me to hate on them. This 76ers team, I mean, you trade for Jaylen Brown, you sign LeBron James. Is it like your Warriors team in terms of star power? I don't know. I feel like it's more like a Miami Heat team, which hasn't really worked out. The only team that really worked out for putting together a super team like that was the Miami Heat. You could say it worked out for Golden State. They brought in KD, but okay. If you look at the other teams that did it, that tried to put together super teams like that, most of them didn't work. But yeah, what else around the NHL? Trying to see here. It doesn't look like a whole lot's going on, which is probably good. Interested to see how McKenna does in Toronto. Of course, Toronto ends up with the number 1 overall pick to sign him. My favorite story about him, just a little aside. I don't know if everybody heard this story, but it like was breaking on Twitter. McKenna, bar fight, cited for, I think it was disorderly conduct or something like that, in Happy Valley at Penn State. And you're like, this kid is getting cited for a bar fight in Penn State in Happy Valley. Like, they know who he is. They know he's going to be a number 1 overall pick in the NHL, and they're giving him a ticket. What happened? How dare he? And then the story comes out that some guy walked up to his mom and called her some unsavory things, and he punched the dude in the face, and everybody was like, yep, still the number 1 pick. I want that guy on the team. I love that. I love that story. I don't even know how it ended. He probably had a fine or something that he had to pay or whatever, but for an hour and a half on Twitter, he was no longer the number 1 pick in the NHL draft. And then bang, there you go. He is right back there. I love that story about him. And I hope he's a good guy, so in the future I don't regret loving that story about him. But, yeah, felt good. Oh, yeah, Patrick Kane going back to Chicago. That's such an interesting choice for me. It's said that he was down to Sabres and Blackhawks. And it's cool that he's going back to Chicago. I don't think he ever really wanted to leave. I always felt like that, but they've wanted to tear it down. But I don't know. I just don't buy into the Blackhawks. They got Bo Byram. I don't know, man. I feel like they're paying Connor Bedard because they have to. Like, he hasn't been transcendent to me. So Kane signing an $8 million deal for 1 year. I mean, that's a big chunk. Now, listen, they can afford it, so fine. But I mean, let me pull up their roster here. and just see what I see. Because they don't have enough. Teravainen, maybe. Yeah, I mean, Bertuzzi's kid, which, fuck that guy. Um, I don't think they've got enough talent for a guy like Patrick Kane to sign there and be like, oh, yeah, it's like LeBron James, right? Like, LeBron James, why did he sign in Philly? Because he can win a ring there, and that's legit. That's fine. Man, that ain't happening in Chicago for Pat Kane. Come on. Like, what are we talking about here? I just feel like it's one of those stories that is a better feel-good story than it is actually in real life. And he's going to, I don't know, does he make a difference on that team? I don't think so. I think he could have made a difference on a team that was closer, which is, it's interesting that the Sabres were the other one because I do think they are closer than the Blackhawks. And I think he could have made a difference on a team like that. What other teams could he have made a difference on? Maybe Montreal, Minnesota, you put a guy like that on one of those teams and just kind of give him that little scoring bump on their other lines. And I feel like he could have made a huge difference, but fell for the nostalgia and wanted to go back to the place where he was the king. And good luck. Good luck. I think it's going to be a long year for you. But hey, you're going to be back home, and I assume wearing your 88, and it'll be a feel-good story, I imagine. Okay. What else did I want to talk about here? All right. Well, I did want to talk about the Rockies quick. I know everybody is very down on them. I have to preface it when I say it all the time, because people are saying like, "Oh, they're terrible." Yes, but they matched their win total from last season in July. Like, we have to take improvement where we can take improvement with the Rockies. I think they have some pieces that you feel like could be part of them eventually being a winning team. And you've got the tough decision to make right now of if you should trade those guys because they're not going to be here when you get to that winning again. So let's fill up the system. Or do you hold on to them and try to sign them to contracts and say, these guys are going to be part of our plan for the future? It's an interesting position that they are in. I think they're not that far away, but it's hard to say, man. It's hard to say. And so, some of their older, like their relievers and stuff, if they feel like they need to move them. That's fine with me. But, some of these guys that, if you just take the best player on their team, Hunter Goodman, he's, I think, 25, 26, something like that. He could be here when you're good. If you sign him to a deal and he's your guy, make him a cornerstone, he can be here when you're good. So I don't know. I mean, a report came out that an offer would have to blow the Rockies away to have them consider trading Hunter Goodman, and I think that's fair. I don't think people should be pissed off about that. I also saw that one of the Holiday brothers, God, which one is in Baltimore? Jackson. Sorry, couldn't remember which is which. Is one of the players that Baltimore is considering trading. Uh, Going back to the Patrick Kane thing, I don't want the feel good part of the story to be more important than the baseball part of the story. But would he play better if he was with his brother? I bet you Matt moves back out here if that is what's going on. I don't know if he still has a house here or not, but I knew they lived in Oklahoma for a while. Um, can you if they're willing to move off of him, is it worthwhile to have both of the Holiday brothers? Do they play better when they're together, or are they not like that? And like I think of some other brother, like the Lopez brothers. You know what I mean? Like for them, didn't really feel like it mattered if they were playing together or if they were on separate teams. But some brothers it really matters to, and so I don't know. I mean, what do you have to give up to get to put something like that together? Would be the question. Let me see here if there's any reporting on it. I don't really think there is. Yeah, I don't really see any like this is what they're asking for. But I know they had said that he would be available um, via trade. So yeah, I mean, is it a situation where the two brothers play better when they're on the same team? And having, if they're both in the same city, I assume Matt is going to be around, having dad around too. If you want to try to sell me on rebuilding the franchise around those two guys, uh, you know, okay. I mean, it's at least a good conversation to have. So that could be interesting. All right, let's take a another commercial break here. We will burn the pre-roll so people come and join and don't have to watch a pre-roll before they get to us. Um, and then when we come back, Broncos back in full pads. Yeah, the NFL season is just around the corner. So we'll talk about kind of big picture stuff with the Broncos and how you feel about them going into camp. We will talk about that next on this Denver Sports Monday. Stick around. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Denver Sports Monday. Like I said, we will do different topics, but I will be streaming every day. And we are going to do Denver Sports on Monday. So if you feel like coming back, talking Denver Sports with me, make sure you mark on your calendars that we'll do that on Mondays for the foreseeable future here. And hopefully we can get some old friends to come on and hang out with us for an hour or two as we move into the future here would be awesome. So we'll see if we can get some of those guys to come on and join us to talk about things. So it's not, you're not just listening to me ramble, but I don't know. I always just like having someone to chat with about it, which is exactly why you should be interacting. If you're here, if you're watching, feel free to drop a couple chats in there and say what's up. I appreciate that, Kevin. Yeah, let the old Twitch group know. We're going to be doing Denver Sports on Mondays, and we'll see if we can grab some of your favorites and have them on to talk Denver sports. First time, long time. Is that you, Nelly? It feels like it's you. I'm not sure. But I'm glad you I'm glad you are first time, long time. But yeah, we'll talk some Denver sports. Interesting. I have to know if it's you, Nelson. That's what. Perfect stranger. So it is. It is you then. I mean, it's not like you and I hung out at the water cooler together or anything. All right. I feel like, is that your, trying to look on Twitter to see if that's your screen name there too. Well, good to have you, Nelly. And maybe you can convince your guys to come give me a half hour or an hour. But I'll send them a text. We'll see if I can get one of them on a week. We'll do Denver Sports on Mondays, so hopefully that day works for them, and we can talk a little bit of Denver sports. Interesting question about Jahdae Barron. Is there a role for him on the team? Of course there is. Is that role going to be significant? That's I think the question that you really want to ask. Kevin, I don't know what they're doing. So I have to admit to Nelly and Kevin and everybody else who is a altitude sports fan, I have not been listening as much recently since the separation. So I don't know what they're doing at Prost on Friday, but Nelly, if you want to, drop it in there, feel free. So yeah, Broncos camp. Let's see. I got you. Come on, stop it. I appreciate you checking out the Twitch stream. All right, we'll get into the Broncos camp here in a minute because Nelly's talking a little bit of shit here. I don't think I ever complained publicly about the interception / catch for the Broncos-Bills playoff game. Oh, Nelly and his band out at Prost on Friday. Maybe I will come out for that. I obviously have said that I'll be streaming, but we'll see. That might be fun. I don't think I ever publicly complained about the Bills. The end, it wasn't really the end. The Bills-Broncos overtime turnover. Golden Experience Giorno. What's up, man? Welcome. Glad you're a first-time chatter. Doing Denver sports today. Mondays will be a Denver sports day. And then we'll do some video games and other things during the week. We'll do some Buffalo sports and some free-for-alls as well. But Denver sports will be Monday. So we've talked Avs and Nuggets already, and we're going to hit some Broncos here coming up soon. Well, I appreciate you checking it out. First time on the channel. Not only checking it out, but also hopping in the chat. Love that. So welcome. And I am from Denver. I was born in Buffalo originally, so I've got this weird cross of sports teams. But in terms of covering teams, I've mostly only covered Denver sports teams. So it's kind of my passion project, if you will. So, yeah, Denver guy, Denver sports guy, and from Belgium. Well, what's up, man? Appreciate you stopping in and checking it out. We're still a little bitter on the Belgians, you know? You didn't have to go doing that in World Cup. So, and I'm not even a soccer guy, but, you know. So, Belgians. But we appreciate you jumping in and checking it out. Oh, yeah. So we're about to talk about the Broncos here in a second. I just have to defend myself against the accusations that I complained about how last season ended between the Bills and the Broncos. And I have to say, I wasn't a fan of the call, but also I think it was a real tough situation to put the referees in. The problem was that in the Rams-Seahawks game, a similar situation happened, and they just said that it was a catch, that he was down by contact. And it was literally no different than the Bills game. But I think if you are leaving that situation up to the referees, then that's what you get. Thank you for the follow. Appreciate that, Golden Experience. Experience? No, it's experience, looks like. Appreciate the follow for sure. So, yeah, I mean, listen, if you leave it up to the referees, you're going to get differing opinions, different calls. Whereas if Cooks just holds on to the football, you know, that's game over. They probably win it there. But I don't think that is close to the reason that the Bills lost that game. It's going to make Bronco fans angry, but I think the Bills were the better team. And, you know, people are going to point to turnovers and such, and I'm going to tell you they had that many turnovers and still had the lead at the end of the game. So if the Bills played a better game, they might walk through that one. I also think there was some bad calls by their coach to put them in a situation where you kick the field goal up by 1 and put the Broncos in a spot where a field goal does them no good. You kick the field goal of death, people call it, because you put them down by 4 points. You gift them 4th down. You gift them desperation. So I think the Bills coach made some bad calls too. You know what I mean? I'm a Saints fan, so I have defeat in my DNA. I don't know. I mean, I feel like Saints fans the past couple decades have had it pretty good. I don't know how old you are, Golden Experience, but, you know, up until recently here, it's been a pretty good run for you. First time I discovered the Broncos was South Park. I think that's the intro they all want. Right? If you find them a new way, you definitely want to find them via South Park. Okay. Let's talk about the Broncos. First, I'll address Nelly's question. I don't even know if he's here anymore. Fine. But I think their first-round pick from last year, Jahdae Barron, is there a role for him? I mean, I think unquestionably yes. And I don't think he can have too much depth at corner. I think his versatility lends well to finding spots for him on the field. I think it just comes down to how much does Vance Joseph want to do that. He likes running with his guys. He doesn't like swapping guys out a lot. And I think that Barron's a sub-package guy. I know that there are people in Denver who have hammered on that if you take somebody with a first-round pick, that you don't draft them to be a sub-package guy. Well, guess what? I think Jahdae Barron's a sub-package guy. And I think it's all about, I mean, if you played football when you were a kid, everybody had that one guy on their team that was just super athletic and a hunter. You know what I mean? Like, and they were, and this, I'm talking when you were 9, 10 years old, right? And it was that kid who was just better than everybody else. And for our, I mean, I don't know that every team does this, but for our guy, we just named a position and we called it the star position, which coincidentally is what Jahdae plays. And we're like, the coaches in half the defenses that we ran were just like, go make a play. That's what you do in this defense. Well, set up the other 10 guys on the field to make sure that they're covering stuff, and you're just that. You know what, Nelly? There you go. God dang joke. See, I don't have a soundboard set up, so I can't put the drops in like you can. But yeah, I mean, a god dang joker, right? Just a guy who you let go out there and make plays. And I think you have to be willing to do that with a guy like Jahdae Barron. He fits a lot of places and he doesn't fit anywhere. And you've got good players at all the positions that he can play. So, and I think you should do this a little bit with Hufanga too. But like, I guess it would be like a strong safety that you drop into the box, or you could call it the star position, like Saban does in his defense, which is what Jahdae played in, and kind of the role that he had. I know Coach did a lot of film work on it. It's one of those things where if he's just a great athlete and can make a difference, you find a way to get him on the field and just let him kind of do his thing. And so in terms of like the starting defensive backfield, do I think there's a starting spot for him? Not really. I don't think you put him at starting nickel and, obviously not at corner, but I think he could do any of those things. And so, what's Riley Moss's future with this team? What's Shaquan McMillan's future with this team? And long term, are you hoping that he takes one of those spots? Maybe. But until then, I think you just find creative ways to, play 3 safeties or run a dime defense where he's playing like more of a linebacker. Maybe you run a dime against pass-heavy tight ends and let him handle that tight end position. I think there's a spot for him on the team. I just think that the Broncos fan base is going to get frustrated with the fact that they spent a first-round pick on a toy, And so eventually people are going to get frustrated that he's not out there every snap changing the game for a first-round pick, and I think it's going to wear on him. I really do. So that's my Jahdae Barron take. As for the Broncos, man, first day in pads, which is awesome. The new facility looks great. The air quality doesn't seem like it's terrific out there. I've heard, and this is what you hear at the beginning of camp. It's running backs and the defense that look the best because the running backs are fresh and defense a little bit quicker to get up to speed than the offense normally. But I've heard Bo looks okay. I obviously have not had the ability to be out there this year, which is a bummer. But I heard the offense looks okay. I heard both J.K. Dobbins and R.J. Harvey cracking off some runs, so that's awesome. I heard the defense looks good. You wonder how much the subtractions are going to hurt that defense. I think they still have issues at linebacker, but how much did Jim Leonard mean to this team. I think Vance Joseph is a very capable coach, so I'm not overly concerned about that. But you don't get that much esteem, momentum as Jim Leonhard unless you meant something to that team. So it'll be interesting to see the effect that has. There's a question about JFM and how much he meant to the team. And so let's see. I don't even know what that deal ended up being. Show me the contract for JFM. $63 million in total, $42 million guaranteed, $21 a year. You don't get paid that unless you matter. You know what I mean? And so it'll be interesting to see what losing him will do impacting this team moving forward. Should have pulled up these contracts beforehand. Let's see. Greenlaw, only $7.5 million, $6 million guaranteed. Didn't play a ton. But he's going to be, I'm not sure that I believe in their linebacker depth as much as they do. And it'll be an interesting conversation throughout the year about if they have enough at that linebacker spot. Sternad's your other guy now. I've always liked Drew Sanders. He's listed as your second in your of your inside linebackers. I'm a huge Red Murdoch fan. Went to University of Buffalo, and just like is it Dolan? Why can't I remember his name? Let's see. It is Dolak. Dolak went to the Rams, undrafted free agent, played well. I think Red Murdoch is going to be a similar type guy. And I have a feeling that he's going to end up taking some snaps. But that's just a hunch. But I really like him from the University of Buffalo. And I think he fits well into the defense. So we'll see. But I just think there's questions at linebacker that they have to answer. So JFM, I think they have enough talent to replace him, but I'm not sure that they have enough talent at linebacker. It's an interesting conversation. I think their defensive backfield is terrific. And so you can take a lot of pressure off a front seven when you can play the way that they can play on the back end, especially with the one thing that front seven is going to do is going to be get after the passer. And so, I think the formula on defense for them is much the same, and I don't necessarily think they need impact players at linebacker to be a successful defense. But it is an interesting spot for me and an interesting question to talk about. How much do they have there? And if we believe that they have championship caliber play. It's one of the things that I talked about when I was talking about them at the end of last season is where does the improvement come? Or do you believe that they don't need improvement? They just needed Bo to be healthy and they would have won the Super Bowl. I think with Bo healthy, I think they walked the Patriots. Very frustrating for me, the Patriots. I think they're a product of their schedule. I think Drake May is good, but I don't think their team overall was very good. I think their defense was not very good at all. And I mean, Chargers with no offensive line, Texans with a quarterback that couldn't play, and Broncos with a backup QB. And it's hard for me to buy the Patriots. I'm interested what other people think. If you think I'm being too harsh on them, but I don't buy the Patriots as AFC contenders for this year. I think they got a little bit better. I think they have some pieces that are real nice, but I just think if they had to play the Jaguars or the healthy Broncos or play the Bills, like the other AFC playoff teams, they would have gotten smoked. I really believe that. And I think the Broncos with a healthy Bo Nix, 21-10 or something. You know what I mean? Like, I really think they would have worked them. So I'm just not a believer in the Patriots, and that's probably a little bit of a bias on my part, but I don't know. I think Drake May is a good quarterback. Don't get me wrong. Can he put up another MVP type season? We'll see. But I think they're due for a regression for sure. It takes me back to the Broncos. The question that I like to ask people is, where does that extra come from? Right? Like, you just need a little bit more. What is going to push you over the edge? And so much about the playoffs in the NFL is just luck, man. It's one game. You know what I mean? Like, you have a bad game and it writes the story of your season. And then for the Broncos, you have an injury and it writes the story of your season. So if you want to tell me that if the Broncos had Bo Nix, they're in the Super Bowl, I'd listen to that for sure. If you want to tell me that the Broncos win the Super Bowl, I don't know that they would have beat the Seahawks as last year. That doesn't mean that they couldn't maybe beat them this year. But if you want to talk about the Broncos as a Super Bowl contender, my question is, where do you get that little bit extra from? You're losing guys on the defensive side of the ball. I still think you can be as effective as you have been the past couple of years. If Sean Payton stays out of Vance Joseph's way and just lets him cook. But then that being said, so you go over to the offensive side of the ball, and I do think the addition that they made there is a notable one. I think bringing in Jalen Waddle can reshuffle how defenses handle that entire offensive scheme. And I like Courtland Sutton a lot. But he's not the same type of explosive player that Jalen Waddle is. And so if you slide Sutton into a second wide receiver role and you put Waddle in that first wide receiver role, there's things that defenses have to account for that they didn't necessarily when your best wide receiver was Courtland Sutton. It does, however, bring me the question of what is happening with Marvin Mims. Like, I just don't know. Can he not do it? And this coaching staff is protecting him. I don't know. He's no doubt explosive, right? So how you can't find snaps and touches for him last year without Jalen Waddle on the team, I I don't know how you're going to do it this year. You still have Troy Franklin. You still have Pat Bryant. I love their wide receiver depth. And that's the effect of adding a first round. Well, I mean, he was. But adding a top flight wide receiver, right? Everybody slots down one, and all of a sudden you really like the matchups all these guys are getting. You know what I mean? And I think that's a great thing for this offense moving forward. And all that is to not even mention Evan Ingram. So, listen, I think Bo proved a lot last year. I still think, as far as AFC quarterbacks go, you know, is he in the top 5? I don't know. So you're talking about middle of the AFC quarterback, which is no slight. I mean, the AFC is loaded when it comes to QB. So what are you going to ask from him this year, and how much can you ask of him? I think the play calling going to Davis Webb is really interesting. Can Sean Payton control himself enough to make sure he doesn't put his hand in the cookie jar? When he doesn't like a call, when things aren't going their way, can he control himself enough to not say, I'm calling this series? And one of the things I saw is Webb going to be on the sidelines or up in the booth? And I think that's really interesting too, because, I mean, of course, he'll be in communication with Peyton either place, but things get hot on that sideline. You know what I mean? And so Peyton has said a few times, has admitted to letting his emotions get the best of him. Whether he was hopped up on a couple lattes talking about Nathaniel Hackett, or, you know, he's on the sideline arguing with Bo about something. And when we've seen that, people, it's been, for the most part, fine. It was a disaster with Russell Wilson because he just whimpered like a dog. But, you know, when he went after Bo a couple times and Bo shot back at him, and I think that's healthy. I think that's okay. And I know Davis is used to being on the sideline, and he used to be kind of the peacemaker in those situations. It'll be interesting if Peyton gets hot at Davis Webb. You know, is it a situation that's easily diffused if Webb is on the sideline, or is it something that you have to talk about? Who's gonna be the peacemaker? Who's gonna be the everybody chill guy between Peyton and Webb if they're on the sideline and they start going at it? So like I said, I think it's important that Peyton keeps his hand out of the cookie jar, even if things aren't going great. And, you know, different head coaches at different times have had trouble with that, not having full control. But I think you also saw a couple of times last year why Sean Payton did this. I don't think he's losing a step. Want to make that clear. But his decision-making was a little bit slow at times last year, Peyton. And you saw Bo get frustrated. I need the play call. Let's go. Get it into me with more than 12 seconds left. And it wouldn't even be 12 seconds because the mic would be cut off. But you know what I mean? Like, get the play call into me faster so I can get everybody lined up and get a look. And you saw that from Bo a few times last year, and I think a few times the year before that as well. And so is that part of the reason that Sean gave up the play calling duties to Davis Webb? Obviously, part of it is that he wanted to keep him and was afraid that he was going to go somewhere else. So long term, is Sean Payton going to be sitting there being like, I could do better? Because I think that's a big thing in all roles. I mean, if you're sitting in an office somewhere watching this, you think about your job. When your boss is constantly looking over your shoulder or, asking you to do things that you don't want to do or thinking I can do them better, it's tough to do your job. Like, you have to enable your workers. You have to empower them. And so if Sean is sitting there and just, nitpicking every detail and taking play calling from him here and there, I just think that's a real ugly scenario to get yourself into with Davis, and I just don't think it's going to let him be the best version of him. So I think all that conversation is super interesting. Where will Davis Webb be? What will be his role exactly? And how much does what he want to do differ from what Sean Payton would want to do? Obviously, it's not a new offense or anything like that, but, the aggressiveness, how much does it differ from what Sean Payton would want to do? And how much does Sean Payton, because, every head coach does that, right? How much does Sean Payton have to get on the headset and be like, yeah, I don't want to run this here. I want to throw the ball. I think we all know Sean Payton's not getting on there saying I want to run the ball here, but maybe he does. So I just think it's an interesting conversation to have about, where they will be and what the plans will be for them in those situations as they kind of feel each other out, head coach to play caller, and a head coach that hasn't had somebody else call the plays ever, at least in a really long time. It'll be interesting, all of that. What else do I want to talk about when it comes to the Broncos? The new stadium, the PSLs, and everything that goes along with it. What a conversation we're having here. So I'm on two sides of this. First of all, Nuggets. Broncos saying that the city of Denver dragging their feet a little bit. Hi, welcome to bureaucracy. I feel like that should have been expected. I don't think it opens by 2031. It'd be interesting if it did. I don't think there's a ton wrong with the current stadium. If you had to play 10 more years there, I think you could. It's just not a stadium that's up to the standards of, the Waltons. Loaded, you know what I mean? So they want one of the best stadiums in the league, and you can understand that. I am very much on their side for a lot of this stuff, and part of the reason is because they're paying for it. They are paying for it. So, of course, there will be taxes for infrastructure and stuff like that. It's not to say that the taxpayers of Denver are getting off scot-free, but they're not asking for $750 million. You know what I mean? It's, unless I missed something and something has changed recently, they're funding the stadium. And so if you do that, I don't care if you, I generally am against PSLs. I think it's a little bit ridiculous. I agree with the fans saying that. To pay for the right to buy something is backwards. So I'll give you that. But what I will say is that it's a regular thing in the NFL now. And I don't think any new stadium has been built that didn't have PSLs. So if the Walton Penners are going to fund it themselves and it's not taxpayer money and they want to do PSLs, this might be the first time that I'm okay with it. Because if they're not taking taxpayer money, this is essentially them saying, yeah, no, the people who are going to use the stadium are going to help fund it. Kevin in Illinois, this is the Broncos trying to put some pressure on the city government, no doubt, to give them concessions. I wouldn't put it past Denver's ignorant government to be demand land acknowledgments. Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah. No, I don't think that's what it is. I think Denver just wants their hand in the pot. Yeah, the Walton Penners have gone above and beyond. I think, and I don't know how many people know this, I'm sure you do, but Denver technically owns Mile High Stadium currently. And so they profited from the Broncos playing there. Broncos sign a lease. You know what I mean? Like, it's a city facility. The new one won't be. If the Walton Penners fund it outright, the city has no say in it. So, yeah, I think the Broncos are trying to put some pressure on the city government and get some concessions out of them. But on the flip side of that, I don't know that they'll get them, because I think the city of Denver is going to try to find as many ways to keep their hand in that pot, which they're currently being cut out of. And so I think it could get uglier before we see any kind of resolution. But it'll be interesting to see how much the city of Denver pushes back. Here's the thing. Like I said, I don't think they need a new stadium right now. So I feel like the city will continue to fight, because I don't think there's any threat of the Broncos leaving. Lots of times, like, think about when Minnesota, when they built their new stadium, the roof collapsed on the other one. You know what I mean? Like, they had to do it. And if they didn't find some sort of resolution, the Vikings are going to leave. I don't think that's the case here in Denver. I think they could play it Mile High, like I said, for another decade. And so I think the city's going to play hardball, because I just don't think you can move the Denver Broncos. I don't think the NFL would let it happen. Andy has talked about this for years. The people that he talked to inside the NFL, they need the Broncos, and they need them to be good, because there are only so many Western cities that have teams, and that 225 slot on Sundays, you gotta have a good team play there. Kansas City does not like playing in that slot. They want to play the 12 o'clock game local. Their 12 o'clock game, they want to play that morning slot. And so I know TV-wise that's always been a point of contention, that even when the Chiefs are good, they don't want to play at 3. They want to play at noon. And so the Broncos playing at 225, along with the Rams and Seahawks and Niners out west, like, those are their big brands. And so they would just never let the team leave here. I would never come to that. So you were mentioning the city being stupid. I think the city knows how much power they have, how much power they don't have, and I think the city wants their hand in the pot, So it'll be interesting how that plays out going forward. I always thought it was ambitious to say 2031, and don't get me wrong, I know money makes it happen. So if anybody could get it done, it's the Walton Penners. And they've been terrific owners so far. I 100% agree with you on that. Everything that there's been some sort of complaint about or anything like that, be it the facilities, how they treated the families, all that stuff. The field. I mean, remember the first year they were here, the field was real beat up, and they were going to play one more game on it, and they still resodded it. Um, I think they've done a tremendous job. All the alumni that I talked to have said that they're terrific when it comes to that as well, which is a little bit of a change. Just more organized and stuff, not more want to for the outreach, but just more organized and better run. So, yeah, I mean, they've been terrific owners. But I think there is a part of the city that knows that they're getting cut out of this deal because the Walton Penners can afford to just do it themselves. And it's going to be interesting to see how much give the city has without making sure they crack off a piece for themselves. Broncos should build a new stadium with new infrastructure outside of town. Just my thoughts. Man, it's super interesting. I know there are sports guys who have advocated for that. But I think for the most part, the fan base would not be happy with the Denver Broncos playing in Castle Rock or, off Pena Boulevard or something like that. There is something to be said for the fact that this ownership group could put down enough infrastructure and not think twice about how much it cost them. That's 100% true. But I think they found a real good location in the city. I think they can afford to do it on their own, but still inside the city limits. And part of that is having enough money that they can lobby, that they can support politicians who support them. I think all that matters. And so it might not be 2031, but if they have to get some people elected to make sure that they get their stadium done, that's the way, unfortunately, our world works. So, they'll put their money behind candidates who are going to give them what they want, and might take an extra couple of years, but they'll get it done. They will get it done. So I think it's important to have the stadium inside the city. I think there is too much urban sprawl, in particular in Denver, in comparison to other cities, that to go to a place where there's nothing and to build the stadium, you just have to go way too far. You have to go way too far. I mean, it's driving from one side of the city to another is a 3-hour experience. That's crazy. And it's not what it's like. I mean, you drive 3 hours, you get from New York City to Philadelphia. You know what I mean? And so I just think if you were to go to where there's nothing to build the stadium, you would be hours away from Denver. And I hate when teams do that. I really do. I hate them calling Foxborough Boston Stadium for the World Cup. It's an hour and a half away. You know what I mean? I hate when teams do that. And I think if you do that, you're only doing it so you could throw your hands up and be done with it. And I think it's worth the fight. I think it's worth the fight to have the Denver Broncos in the city. I think they've got a good location for it, a part of the city that is very industrial, needs a little bit of a rebirth. Something new there will absolutely change the city, the traffic flow, the outlook, just like Coors Field did for Lodo. I think it's the right move. I really do. And I think this group has the ability to be able to do it. Um, so, and listen, if that costs PSLs, I don't know. Maybe it's just me because I'm not paying it and it's not my money. But it might be the first time I'm okay with the PSLs. Like if they pay for everything, if they don't take tax dollars to build that stadium, like of course there will be tax dollars for infrastructure. I mean, yeah, of course. But if they don't take tax dollars to build that stadium, it might be the first time I'm okay with PSLs. Generally, I would be very against it, but um, you know, they fund the whole thing themselves. Then I think they have the right to do that if they want to. Um, it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting, and I know they're going retractable roof. Um, Kansas City also going retractable roof, which means by the time this stadium is done, whole AFC West is playing indoors. It's kind of crazy. I mean, if you had to pick, I guess you'd probably say AFC North. But if you had to pick one that wasn't going to go all indoors, AFC West might have been one of my first choices. So, I don't know. It's just kind of crazy. PSLs will cause more selling to away teams' fans, and that will suck, but it's already bad. Yeah. I mean, I know Denver people hate the fact that it has gotten like this, but it's a transplant city. It just is. It is too nice. People like living here. And so, people have been moving here like crazy. And part of that is you see Boston fans at the Avs games and Laker fans at the Nuggets games, and yeah, you're gonna see other fans in the stadium a lot. But I think Bronco fans are good fans, and I think they're really proud, and I think they will do their best to make sure that even if they do sell their tickets, which I think you're right, if you have PSLs, they're going to be trying to cover some of that cost. So they're going to be selling games. But if they do sell their tickets, Bronco fans, I think, will do the best they can to make sure that it gets into the hands of another Broncos fan rather than the opposing team. But I mean, it's just a fact of life. The reason that you see some of these other towns where Pittsburgh, where everybody's waving a terrible town, nobody wants to live there. Respectfully. I mean, it's not a city that a bunch of people are moving to. The people who move to Pittsburgh are from West Virginia or Happy Valley or whatever, right? Like, you don't have a ton of people moving there from all over the country. Yeah, I mean, saying it's a destination city, Kevin, absolutely right. And so it's one of the things that you just kind of got to deal with for the fact that you live somewhere awesome. Not you in particular, Kevin, but you meaning the Bronco fans. It's something that you got to deal with. So I think as we move into the future, the NFL is going to try to find ways with ticket resellers and so on and so forth to limit where you can buy those tickets from and make it so more of the fans in the city get those tickets, be it locking zip codes or something like that. But even that, I've got a Denver zip code and I'm a Bills fan, you know what I mean? So how are you going to stop me from buying tickets to the Christmas Day game? You can't. And so yeah, I mean, it's just something you got to deal with. Monk, I remember you from before, I feel like. But good to see you back. What about the Bears? It's a really interesting conversation. And this is, to Kevin's point earlier, We were talking about how I think they found a good spot in the city that needs a little bit of rejuvenation. It's right off the highway. I think it's a good spot to build that stadium, and I think the uber wealthy Walton Penners will just find a way to get it done there. You know what I mean? Um, you have the opposite situation in Chicago. Their owners do not have that kind of capital. And I know they're one of the legacy families in the NFL, but in a city like Chicago, they do not have the capital to buy up a whole bunch of land and say we're building this stadium by ourselves right here, whether you want us to or not. They need the help from the city. And so I did feel like it was a little ridiculous them going to Indiana. But then when I pulled up the map and actually looked at it, like I think it was Arlington Heights is the other spot that they were looking at. The Arlington Heights site is further away from current Soldier Field than they would be in Hammond. So, I said openly here before, I don't like when they build stadiums an hour and a half away from the city and then say that they're in the city. The Jets and Giants not acknowledging that they play in New Jersey is annoying. But that's only 10 minutes away from New York City. You know what I mean? And I feel like that would kind of be the situation here. I don't know, man. It's tough because where do I think they should build the stadium? Right where Soldier Field is. Build the stadium there. But that ownership group just does not have the ability or the capital to do that. So whether they put it up north in the suburbs or down south in Indiana, man, I just the option I want is the one that's not on the table. And that's for them to build it right where Soldier Field is right now. Because I think there's something to be said for having the stadium in the city. I think it changes the vibe. And I think there are two extremes to it. You can either be like the Bills and the Packers and put it in a neighborhood and try to build a culture around that, which I think is very cool and I'm fine with, where people park on lawns and tailgating is your thing and all that. Like, if you want to be like that, then fine. But just to drive out to the middle of nowhere so the owners can put in some strip mall and make you pay extra for parking and food and everything because they own everything out there, I think that kind of sucks. I would rather you put it in the middle of a city where, like, some entrepreneurs can buy up spots and, put bars there, and you have options to go to a 7-Eleven and get your beer, and you know what I mean? Like, you don't have to just buy from the uber wealthy person who put all this out there. And so it's kind of one of those things where, I don't know, Arthur Blank, I think did it the right way in Atlanta where he's not gouging you for everything. But how many owners are going to do that? And so when I go to the Foxborough Mall, and I don't know if you've ever been to these stadiums, but it sucks. The experience sucks. I can say that about Arizona too. It's the same thing. They built it way out and it's far away from, that city is spread out across miles and miles, but they built it way out there. You show up, you have to pay to park at their lot. You can only go to the bars in the little mall that they put in. It's just stupid, man. Like, it sucks. The experience sucks. And it's made to drive you into the stadium, so you go and you spend $20 on a beer in there, Cincinnati has a nice setup. I do know it's right downtown, next to downtown in Cincinnati, but I did think it was like kind of by the river. I haven't been, but like, I mean, I'll just point to Coors Field for the Denver people. They plopped it like right on a roadway. You know what I mean? Like it was all train tracks and factories there, and so it made sense to put it there. And a ton of entrepreneurs did well and made money, and they put apartments there and bars and restaurants, and it's kind of died down recently, but it was a great place to be for a long time. And so I'm for Denver doing that again. And for Chicago, that's what I would want. I'd want them to put it in the city, but you're not going to get that because their owners just cannot afford to do that. So my question would be, if they're putting in Hammond, will that town embrace it and build up around it and make it a destination and so on and so forth? Because that'd be awesome if that was the case. I don't think if they put it in Arlington Heights, if they put it in the suburbs, it was like a racetrack or something like that. So if they put it up there, I just feel like it's going to be the shitty corporate, thing that we all hate. And like, who doesn't go to one of these places and see $14 for a hot dog and $22 for a beer and just like want to shoot themselves? I mean, come on. That has to piss all of us off. I can't be the only one. So, to say, oh, they should build it further out or something like that, it's just not my thing. So, yeah. All right, what else do we got here on our list of things to talk about? A little bit of a diatribe there on stadiums. But, I think the PSLs, I think it's worth talking about. So, AJ Brown apparently dislocated his thumb at Pat's camp. He's an interesting case because their offensive line is okay. People are saying that their first round pick, Campbell, will be better if he's healthy. So, okay, I'll listen to that. But I don't think their defense is good. I don't think their defensive line is good. I think Christian Gonzalez is good, but he might be the only one. And so, you go get this big name player who, if you bring in a guy like that, I don't have a problem with them being a little bit of a diva or loud or whatever. But if you bring in a guy like that, you better win. Guys like that, they don't stay quiet if you are losing. And so it's interesting to me because it's one of those things where I expect a regression from the Patriots this year. Might still make the playoffs, but I don't think they win as many games as they won last year. And so how happy is A.J. Brown for how long? And how much do you have to hear about it if he's not? I think Vrabel knowing him and that relationship can help. But I also think Vrabel, he's not in a great situation right now. And so if they had just, without any scandal, went from year one to year two, I liked Vrabel a lot. I thought he was going to make a big difference there. He did. But his off the field issues, you never know how that's going to affect somebody. And I don't think they've really truly been resolved. I think they've just been brushed under the rug, and I think at some point there's going to be a Pablo Torre type who's going to just blow the lid off some of that stuff, even with all that the NFL has tried to damp it down. So I think the Patriots spent more time talking about the Patriots today than I expected to. But I think they're interesting, and I think A.J. Brown dislocating his thumb could be the start of something that's just a year-long annoyance. Reading Mike Reese's report on it from ESPN.com. Says it was tough, tried to get back into the flow state zone really quickly because obviously you're going through some pain. The game is what it is. You're going to get bumps and bruises and you have to keep going. I know it's practice, but I'm not coming out of practice. Thumb out of place, ? You keep going. We'll see how long he keeps that attitude, But interesting. Taysom Hill talk. We got to talk a minute about Taysom Hill. I would hate if the Broncos signed him so much. And I know he is Sean Payton's boy, but you're signing him for what, man? I mean, you have Troutman. You have Stidham. I don't know. I mean, I feel like if Sean Payton signs Taysom Hill, it's purely a nostalgia thing, right? Like, I don't see any actual benefit to the Denver Broncos having Taysom Hill on their roster. Do you think that he could play quarterback better than Stidham? No, I don't think so. Not that Stidham's great. But I just don't think. I mean, Taysom Hill was never a good quarterback. And even when they needed a long-term replacement in New Orleans, they turned to Jameis Winston, not him. So maybe you could, if you're at the end of that overtime playoff game with the Bills and Bo just can't go, maybe you can run like a wildcat safe offense with Taysom Hill to, just pick up a couple extra yards, burn some clock, and put yourself in a position to kick that field goal. Like, that's a scenario where I'd see maybe you'd go to him instead of Stidham. But I don't think he does you any good as a quarterback. I don't think he does you any good as a tight end. So why are you signing Taysom Hill? Like, it would be purely a feeling thing, wouldn't it? Like, it would be a feel-good story thing is the only thing I can think of. Jadeveon Clowney going back to the Texans. I like Clowney. I liked Mario Williams too. I think they're two guys who have had similar paths. Good, real solid defenders. Not great. Didn't live up to the hype, but they don't choose where they get drafted. And I think it's kind of cool that he's going back to Houston. Maybe the opposite of Patrick Kane, because I feel like Jadeveon Clowney is exactly what the Houston Texans need. They've got the big names on the D-line. Now they just need a guy who's going to grind it out, play the run, provide a little bit of pressure, can win some one-on-ones, but, not a dominant force. I mean, Will Anderson will handle that. You know what I mean? So I like the fit as a, rotational defensive lineman for them. And I think it's cool for him to go home. So maybe I'm a sucker for the story there a little more than I let on in other scenarios, but I think it's a good fit, and I think it's good for him to go back. And the Texans team, man, it's all about who C.J. Stroud is. God, he looks so good starting off. And last year was just an absolute dumpster fire. Playoff game was incredible. So, to me, I mean, they got some weapons. You wonder what Tank Dell will be like. He got cleared, but he blew up his whole leg and that all that. They got decent running backs. Nico Collins is a top tier wide receiver. It's that team to me is just all about how the quarterback plays. And, the offensive line certainly impacts that. I don't think that's the whole reason that CJ Stroud fell off, but it'll be interesting to see what their situation is. Rams, man, that Aaron Donald story just won't go away. Just won't go away. And if there's anybody, I said this about Trent Williams too, but he's different because I don't think he has to do much. That man rolls out of bed an all-pro tackle. Aaron Donald, I would say, I know he's in shape. The one thing I'm not worried about is if he's in game shape. So if he wants to come back, there's no point in the season that I would say no thank you. So I wouldn't be rushing him to make a decision either. But the hints coming out in Story Wars, who can get a beat on if he's going to come back and play or not. I believe that he doesn't know, and Sean McVay and Les Snead don't really know. And that's fine. He can come back later and everything will be fine. What else from the playoff teams from last year? Steelers. Gosh, I still just think they're just a 10-win team. I like Michael Pittman. I think him and DK Metcalf is good receiver group. I think Aaron Rodgers will be able to distribute the ball. I trust Mike McCarthy to get them open. I didn't think they were a 10-win team last year, and I think they overachieved a little bit. I do think they're a 10-win team this year. But that'll just depend on what the Ravens and Bengals look like, man. How much of a bite can they take out of them? The Ravens have a good roster, but new coach, we'll see. It's a big we'll see for me. And the Bengals, I don't know. I don't think there's enough there. I really don't. I think there's been a lot of misallocation of funds and picks and so on and so forth. I don't know. We'll see. I think the Jaguars are still good, man. I think if they had to play anybody but the Bills first round last year, I think they make it deeper in the playoffs, and I just think that's a good team. I think Trevor Lawrence has figured it out a little bit, so we'll see. But I tend to be a believer in the Jags more than most people. And we talked about the Texans a little bit. The Chargers, man, I don't think the Chargers are as bad as everybody. Everybody wants to take a big old dump on them because of how they finished. They were 11-6, and they didn't have an offensive line. Their two tackles both went out with big injuries. Yeah, I mean, I think they're still an 11-12 win team. And then Kansas City, 6-11 last year. I think they live in that world. I think they're a 500 team. How much can Patrick Mahomes do to drag them back into relevance? I think he can do a lot. But I just don't think they have the horses. They traded away their best corner. I just don't see it. All the problems that we felt like they had for the past few years reared their head last year. And the year before that, like they won, I think 10 one-score games. I think they were 10-1 in one-score games or something like that. Like Mahomes pulled it out of his ass. That roster has been talent deficient for a while now. And that's what happens when you pick, late all the time. So I think the 6-11 is as good of a reflection of what that roster is right now as 2024 when they went 15-2. You know what I mean? I think the truth is probably somewhere in the middle, and it's all just about if Mahomes can drag them to relevance. But I think that roster is clearly not as good as Denver or I almost said San Diego or the Chargers. So, and then on the NFC side of things, Eagles, they've let a lot of guys go, man. A lot of players I liked have left their roster. I think that's probably a 10-win team. I think people would throw things at me for saying that. But I don't think Jalen Hurts is the guy. I think they have a terrific offensive line. I think Jalen Hurts is just good. Sorry. I don't think that's a knock on him, but some people get mad if you don't put him in, the rarefied air of quarterbacks, and I just don't. Can Saquon be healthy all year? Can they lean on that offensive line and make things easy for Hurts? I think they let a lot of guys on their defense go. I don't know if they can put it back together. I think it's probably a 10-win team. I like what Dallas has done. Hate to say that, but I like what Dallas has done, and I think they'll be in the running. I think whoever wins the East, probably a 10-win year. But like in the East, so often it just feels like who gets hot. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't. No, I shouldn't say that, because there were a couple of years there that I felt like the Eagles had the best roster in football. But it just feels like who is going to get hot and win that division. Commanders, same thing. Like, and the Giants with Harbaugh. I think it makes a difference, man. I don't think they're a 4-win team. I think they got more talent on there than being a 4-win team. So, can they win 8 games? Yeah, I think so. Can they win 10 games? I wouldn't be blown away. But if you do that, you're probably talking about Jackson Dart being better than a lot of people thought he was. NFC North is going to be interesting, as always. I think the Lions are in trouble. Sorry. I always liked them. I want them to do well. I sympathize with a good fan base that has been tortured for a really long time. But their defensive backfield is a disaster. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. I think the Packers are probably the class of that division. With due respect to the Bears, I think the Bears are probably a wild card team. But those two teams, I think, are really neck and neck, and it's just going to be about which one of their quarterbacks continues to take steps forward, Love or Williams. And I think that should be a fun little battle for the next couple years here. And then Minnesota, it'll be interesting if Kyler can do something there, but I don't think that's a team that many people fear. So, NFC South, I think the Bucs are going to fall apart. I think they're going to trade Vita Vea. I think Baker's going to refuse to sign a contract with him and be insulted by what they offer him. I think that team's going to fall apart. New Orleans, man, they played tough at the end of last year. It'll be interesting to see if they can do something. Falcons, it's a bunch of guys that have a lot of talent, but they just never can put it together. Never looked good. I do like the Stefanski hire, though. I feel like that can help them. And Carolina, I mean, it's all about Bryce Young. He has looked good at times, but I just don't know how much he's got in him. And then maybe the most fun division is the NFC West. I think the Seahawks come back to earth a little bit. And I understand why everybody's talking so big about the Rams. I just think this is a tough division, man. Like, I think they're a good team, but I just think it's going to be hard to do better than they did last year. 12-5, I think, is where you can aim at. You know, and San Francisco, I mean, held together by duct tape last year, and they still went 12-5. Yeah, I mean, that NFC West is just going to be so much fun this year. At least it feels like it, right? It feels like that's going to be maybe the best division in football. NFC West, NFC North. I could see the NFC East getting in the conversation. AFC West. That's probably it. I don't think the AFC North is gonna be the best division in football, but there's a couple contenders alongside the Broncos division of the AFC West. I think the AFC West can be a lot of fun this year. Would I pick the Broncos to win it again? I don't think so. But not because I don't think that they're the best team, just because I think there's so much depth there. I even think the Raiders, like, I've liked what the Raiders have done. After the whole Max Crosby debacle, I've liked everything that they've done this offseason. I like them getting Linderbaum. I like them letting Kirk Cousins start a year. And he probably doesn't start the whole year, but I don't think Mendoza's ready to. I don't think he was one of those quarterbacks that you watched in college and you're like, he's ready for the NFL right now. Like, you watched Joe Burrow and you're like, put him in the NFL, he's ready. You watched Andrew Luck and you put him in the NFL, he's ready. I don't think Mendoza was at that level. So I like them having Kirk Cousins. I don't think that means that he's going to be great. But that's not what you're looking for out of him. You're just looking for him to be an adequate starter, for him to teach Fernando Mendoza how to be an NFL quarterback. And, can you win a couple games? Yeah, I'm not expecting all that much out of Kirk Cousins. I think it's what he gives your room and your locker room and Fernando Mendoza that's worth more. So, I mean, I really have liked a lot of the stuff that the Raiders have done, which is gross to say. Ugh, I said that about the Raiders and the Cowboys. Ugh, that is disgusting. But yeah, so I think they'll be a competent team, and they might snag a win off, one of those top three, and make it harder for somebody to win the division just because they'll jump up and bite you. But we'll see. And then on the flip side, who do I think are the really terrible teams? Who's going to be in the discussion for top pick? Dolphins. I think the Jets will be a little bit better this year. I don't think they'll be top pick, but I'll think, top 5. But yeah, I think the Dolphins are just a train wreck. I think Cleveland's going to be a little bit better than people think, which is annoying. I think Tennessee is going to be better than people think. I think the Colts will be in a spot for a top pick this year. I just am not a Daniel Jones believer, man. I don't know what to say. I know they were great when he was playing last year, and yeah, I'm sorry. I do not believe in Daniel Jones. I don't think the Raiders are top pick worthy. I think anybody in the NFC East, I don't think any of them are top pick worthy. Man, I think the Lions have too much talent, but I think they're going to have a tough year. Vikings, probably not. I think I could see the Saints being top pick worthy, but I like I said, they were scrappy last year. and the Cardinals definitely. So it'll be interesting to see. Right now, people are projecting Arch as that top pick, and I think it's just because people know the name. One, I think he's going to stay in college. Like, I feel like he does himself no good coming out. He knows that. His family knows that. So the only way he goes and goes to the NFL, I think, is if he looks at the team that has the top pick and says, that's a good franchise, I want to be part of it. That's the only way I think he comes out. And that would be him having a great year in college, which he has not. He just hasn't been. But if he has a really good year and is the surefire number one pick and likes the franchise up there, then maybe I could see it. But I think he's going to go back to school again. So let's put him in some uniforms and see if we like the way that looks. Dolphins, I don't think he comes out for the Dolphins. Maybe. Jets, I think he tries to stay away from. I just don't think they're going to look at that organization and say that it's run well. Cleveland, same thing. Colts, maybe. Follow Uncle Peyton, that would actually be quite the story. But if the Colts end up with the top pick, Arch Manning, maybe. Let's see. Raiders wouldn't pick him. I mean, maybe they would. But oh, wow. Could you imagine the Lions having that bad of a year and that being where he goes? Man. For everything that Dan Campbell has said about Jared Goff, it'd be very interesting if they ended up with the top pick and Arch would be willing to go there. Again, this is all assuming that he has a good year. He has not even had a good year in college football yet, but most of the mock drafts you see have him towards the top of the mock draft board. So I'm just having a little fun picturing him in different uniforms, if I could see it or not. Because like I said, I think he goes back to school another year. So like I said, just a little exercise and fun. NFC South. Oh, the Saints. Yeah, you could definitely see that, right? Saints end up with the top pick. Tyler Shuck doesn't have that good of a year. You could definitely see that. And then Cardinals. No, he probably goes back to school if it's the Cardinals, right? It's interesting. Let's pull up one of these before we get out of here. We're almost done, but let's pull up one of these mock draft boards and see what people have here. Because last I looked, and granted, don't look all that often. Oh, that's fantasy football. I don't need a fantasy football draft. So Tankathon has Arch Manning 1, Dante Moore 2, Julian Sayin 3. I think that is. Come on. Julian Sayin 3? So my boy Sturls does a whole lot more draft work than I do. And we'll be talking Buffalo sports on Thursday. And I'm going to bring that up to him. I'm interested to hear. Because it's one of those situations where the quarterback's in the perfect situation. Best wide receivers in college football. Best, program in college football. And he's 6'1", 208, and you think he's the third overall pick? I don't know, man. Jeremiah Smith at 4, his wide receiver. Go figure. An Ohio State wide receiver in the top 5. Colin Simmons, edge from Texas. Dylan Stewart, edge from South Carolina. Oh, Jordan Seaton, break my heart. Tackle LSU. Come on, CU. Leonard Moore, cornerback Notre Dame. CJ Carr, quarterback Notre Dame. And David Stone, defensive lineman, Oklahoma. I actually had heard of him before. Interesting. They have the Cardinals picking first right now. Cardinals, Dolphins, Jets, Browns, Titans is what they got. Yeah, I think the Cardinals probably end up with the number one pick. If I had to bet on somebody, that division is better than like the Dolphins and Jets play each other twice. You know what I mean? So they got chances to get wins there. Yeah. It's interesting. I just think if the Cardinals are the top pick there and Arch has a good year, remember this is just hypotheticals that we're throwing out. But if the Cardinals have the top pick there and Arch has a decent year and is, almost a surefire first overall pick, I think he goes back to school. I don't think he goes to the Cardinals. Right? There's no way the Manning family does that. Especially if they feel like he's got room to grow as a college quarterback and get better. But it's one of those things where, like, you go back, you have a bad year, you're no longer the number one overall pick. Which I'm sure some people would say, but I don't know. He's a Manning. Like, I find that really hard to believe. Walter Football is also one. But I don't think they have a... Oh, yeah, they do. Here you go. Well, let me read it. Mock draft, round one. Man, what a life. We're already looking at mock drafts for 2027. Yeah, he's got Arch Manning number one as well to the Miami Dolphins. I think it's possible that he would come out if it was the Dolphins. I don't think he'd come out for the Cardinals. Jets second for Dante Moore. Raiders third, Jeremiah Smith. Titans fourth, Dylan Stewart, edge South Carolina. Cardinals fifth, Jaden Mayava. Quarterback USC. I hadn't seen that name that high. That's interesting. All right, well, there you go. We did a little draft talk. That was a Denver Sports Monday. I appreciate y'all for coming and hanging out. Kevin in Illinois, shout out to you. Appreciate you hanging out, interacting. Monk, if you're still here, good to see you back. Who else? Nelly came through. Mental health guy. Appreciate y'all, man. I haven't been on in a long time. Decided to try to ramp this thing back up. So I appreciate everybody who watched, everybody who came out and hung out. We will put some of these videos cut up on YouTube as well. So be on the lookout for that. And then we'll do different topics throughout the week. So if you only want Denver sports, come back on Mondays. And if you want to just hang out, we'll be doing different video games and such throughout the week. Come and kick it with us. But I appreciate y'all for hanging out today. And I don't know. I should have like a sign off, shouldn't I? Oh, I used this once on the radio and I liked it. Because I do believe it. If something's worth doing, it's worth doing right. So make sure you spend the extra time on it to do the things that you care about well. And with that being said, hopefully you enjoyed the Denver Sports Talk. We'll catch you tomorrow right here. YouTube, Twitch, and always you can follow us on social media at Rob T Radio. Love y'all. Have a good night.